guys, welcome to another episode of the Agent Boost Marketing Podcast. We're coming at you deep just after halftime of annual enrollment of the 2023 year. So one of the things that might surprise some agents to learn is we actually spend, it used to be, Dan, back in the day that this time of year was pretty chill for us. Yep. It was kind of like our least busy season, but now it goes from busy to very busy to extremely busy, pretty much
busy again
all year round. And one of the things on the FMO side that we really focus on a lot during annual enrollment is we start recruiting a lot. And so we've been growing our agent talent team, our recruiters, to bring on more agents, because what we find a lot of times during annual enrollment is, just like the carriers, a lot of agents very quickly know if their current setup and structure is going to be conducive, right? Everybody has these big expectations for annual enrollment or open enrollment if you're on the ACA side of things. Yep. And right now, everybody's, if what you were promised or what you implemented or what your marketing plan isn't working, a lot of people instantly go into this mode where they're looking to solve that going into next year. So right now is actually a super busy time for us on agent onboarding.
Well, there's a couple components to that too. So number one, it's sad because there's a lot of legacy agents who've been around in the industry for a while that historically they used to write half of their business or more during AEP. Mm-hmm. We've talked about it before on previous episodes where it's not that way anymore. People are consistently writing business, and actually they'll write more business throughout the year, not in AEP. But what we found is that some agents take their foot off the gas, so to speak, throughout the year, and then they're just thinking, I'm going to have this killer AEP and I'm going to crush my numbers. I'll work hard then. And then, AEP rolls around and, of course, it's always a reflection of your effort throughout the year. Yep. If you were working hard throughout the year, banking deals, building your pipeline, doing that, you're having a great AEP. But if you're not, again, you can't just grab your satchel and have a fantastic AEP. It doesn't work like that. So then what happens is agents start, they're already missing their mark. They didn't hit their pre-AEP enrollments that they wanted. Then their first week of October, second week is a little bit slow. And then suddenly their run rate starts to get lower. It's inevitable. They're not hitting their goals. And then they start getting frustrated and they're looking for alternative solutions, right? So Yeah, to your point, it's a very busy time for us right now, actually recruiting and onboarding because of that trend that we see. And then also it's due to the fact that a lot of the carriers are in blackout, right? So if you were looking to change during like the summer months for AEP, you couldn't move your contracts or realign then. But obviously right now you can, start that process, so to speak, and then, enter the new year realigned and kind of starting clean, so to speak. Yep. So I think that's the other component to why it actually ends up being busy for recruiting as well.
Yeah, and what we've done, we've been spending the past couple of weeks going through our 2024 roadmap, delineating out specific agent types, right? Because one of the things that I feel like makes us different is we recognize that certain people are going to do business a certain way, or they may be more successful with extra help. We're talking about things like being a traditional field agent where you're mostly on your own, or being an LOA agent where you get more support, more handholding, more investment, but you don't own that book of business at first.
Sometimes they call them captive agents.
Yeah, or a captive agent. And I think it's very important for agents to understand what type of agent they are and want to be. And I think, just kind of going back to the call letter that we talked about last week, that's probably going to become increasingly important. And I do see a world in which you have W-2'd sales agents, captive, independent 1099 or LOA captive agents as well. And then the fully independent 1099 direct to the carrier field agents as well, and maybe some even other type of hybrid agent types as well out there, because I just think that that's going to be what the industry calls for going forward.
Yeah, we will see more of it. Let's break it down a little bit more specifically so people understand what those agents are. So we as a company have internal agents that we hire that are on payroll, so to speak. So they are employees. They come punch a clock. They have shifts. They have to request days off. They're employees, and we have employees.
Paid benefits,
correct,
401k, all that
retirement,
stuff.
All that stuff. Yeah. So we have employed agents that are Medicare sales agents that are employees. We have ACA agents who are employed, and we also have retention people who are employed. And then outside of that, you look at like the broker distribution, and then it's all contractors, right? Which most listeners are going to be contractors. Then we look at that and go, okay, how do you want to be a contractor? Do you want to be direct pay from the carrier? So do you want to own your own book of business? A traditional agent, right? Do you want to sell and produce your own policies and have us support and facilitate and provide some structure for you? And then you own that business and it's yours, you're a regular agent. Or do you want to enter into more of like a captive arrangement, be an LOA, line of authority, or a licensed only agent, however you want to phrase it, or a solicitor agent? So there's all those different kind of models and agent types. And granted, people are going to be like, why would somebody want to be an LOA or a captive? Why on earth would you want to do that? Mm-hmm. It really depends on the agency you're with. I actually see agencies out there who do a phenomenal job that provide a whole lot of support for those agents, and that's the reason why they succeed. I also see some bad agencies out there who make people LOAs and shave their commissions and don't treat them very equitably or fairly.
Or worse, those agents don't even know they were LOA agents, right, or they were set up that way.
Right. So It's kind of one of those it really depends. It's a situational thing. It's, if the opportunity is there and the resources and the support mechanisms to justify it, it makes sense for a lot of people to be an LOA agent or a captive.
Yep.
And other people who are like wildly successful that can gen their own marketing, run their businesses, do their retention reports, take care of their clients, and significantly grow their own business, makes sense that they're an independent agent out there.
Yeah, and I think all these different agent types actually are important. They're important to understand, but I think a lot of times people talk bad about one type or the other. But the reality is your career in this industry is potentially long, and a lot of times there's a learning curve.
Yep.
So what's important is that you're actually in a structure where you're able to find some success, where you're able to learn how to do the business and make enough financially to kind of survive. Because as we've talked about before, most agents are out of the business within 2 years.
Right.
And we can kind of talk about that here in a minute. But so what we coach
But a lot of it is because they don't understand the different choices that are out there.
Correct.
And the different opportunities, and they make a bad decision.
Yep.
And that's either by their own doing, or sometimes they're being, I want to say tricked or fooled or influenced to be a certain agent type that really isn't conducive for their situation.
Yeah. And we sat down with our agent success team, our onboarding team this week, and we spent about 4 hours going through kind of the agents that are out there in the marketplace right now. And we literally broke it down into field agents and agents that are aligned under some sort of hierarchy or FMO like us that ultimately aligns to a private equity group, right? Yeah. Or there's a lot of agents that are getting into the business now, and this is what we see a lot. A lot of the agents that are joining the industry now are from a call center, or they were a W-2 employee. They go and have a call center career, and it doesn't work out for whatever reason or the other. And they're like, well, I'm a licensed agent, and I have these state licenses, so I'll go out looking for opportunity. Or you have a couple of, like, we call them the independent FMOs out there that aren't, that are still sovereign, that are still unowned,
right?
Like us and a handful of our other partners out there. And then there's a couple of carrier-owned, where the insurance carriers, the partners actually own some of the FMOs. And so any agent that's out there in the market selling Medicare or ACA is under one of those types of buckets or under one of those types of structures upline. And so
the one thing that I'll add to that as you're describing it all is when I've had conversations with agents, and I have been having these interactions for well over a decade now, is it really doesn't matter. And I don't care what people call us, IMO, FMO, NMO. We're just your partner. We're here as a support mechanism. We're trying to help you succeed. So I always tell people, look, I don't care if you're with another agency, you're with some other FMO. If what you're doing works and you're getting the support and the resources that you need and you're growing your business and you're winning, that's what matters. And so it's like finding that entity that you can align with that is going to help you succeed, and you can stack those chips every year and you're winning and growing. That's what's the most important thing. Not about well, I'm with this person, I could hypothetically, in theory, do X or Y or Z, or I could be getting, are you winning? And the reality is, when we're having these interactions with agents, if you talk to an agent that's out there that's just crushing it, that they're growing their income every year by $50,000 or $100,000 per year, year over year, those people aren't shopping around looking for a new agency or FMO or someone else to do business with, because they're crushing it and they're happy. It's usually the people who are not winning, and that's the reason that they're out shopping the market, so to speak, and trying to find a new alternative model. So,
yeah, it's interesting, because I do think that the industry is needing, especially with the potential changes on the table with CMS and Health and Human Services, the dynamic is changing, and it requires a more sophisticated agent. And we all as agents should be really trying to add value and learn our place in the market and the industry. And to your point about, it's interesting when agents are concerned about, well, who's going to own the book from the beginning, or how am I going to get compensated? And it's like, well, brother, you've never wrote one policy yet. So like you don't even know how to do the industry yet. And both Dan and I actually started as captive ICAs for United Healthcare. So we lived that world. We started as captive, only selling one product with one carrier, and kind of like grew and evolved like that. So I think there's no way
well, and I'll even put it to you this way. I was an employee with United Healthcare for 6 months. I was an ISR. Same thing. Anyways, ironically, it's called an independent sales rep. You're not independent, but anyways, but I didn't own the business. So I was an employee for 6 months. I wrote, applications for United Healthcare, and I knew I didn't own the business, but it's okay. I got a salary, I got benefits, I got a lot of great training. It was wonderful. It's not a negative. It was actually a very great experience. So I knew that I didn't own the business, and it was great for me.
Dan started from the bottom. Now he's here, right? Omar?
That's true.
Gone all the way to being the principal FMO. So that's my point is. That's a prime example. Is you can get into this business, learn, and you can grow and evolve. One of the things that to that point is, a lot of our team members here have come from carriers too. They did time, so to say. They were trained by the carriers. Brian, that's one of our important team members.
He was a Humana market.
Yeah, he was, and he still raves. He went through Humana's training in Kentucky 12 years ago, and he still raves about how great it was to go out there for 3 weeks and learn all the ins and outs of Medicare. And he
loved that role playing.
Yeah, and he's an expert in his field for sure. So there's definitely advantages.
That's what I kind of want to get to and allude that there's. You look at all these different paths that people have to success, and it's not like this linear, perfect thing for people. It looks very different. And so I think that that's the other perspective we want agents to have sometimes, is that, it's not sometimes always a realistic expectation that you're like, I want the top contract. I want to get paid direct. I want to own it. I also want leads. I want co-op, everything under the sun.
Oh, and by the way, give me all the tools and technology and train me how to do this.
Well, yeah, they're starting from scratch, but they want everything. And so it's like everything, it's a sales environment. And the more that people are producing and selling and doing, the more that they can demand in the marketplace, right? Because this business, same thing, is just like any other marketplace. The more you do, the more leverage that you have, the more negotiating room you have, and the more value you have.
Yeah. So let's I have a list. This is one of the trainings that I like to go over with agents when I do trainings. It's called Reasons Why Agents Fail. And I've added onto that comma and how to avoid that, right? Because a lot of people call this business 8% nation. Statistically, 10% or less of people who get licensed in the insurance industry are still in the business 2 years later, or we've joking around called it last chance millionaires,
It's true.
Where people think that once they get their insurance license, it's like one of my favorite episodes of South Park is where the underwear gnomes steal the underwear, and their business model is 1, steal the underwear. Omar loves my analogies. Steal the underwear. 2 is question mark. And then 3 is profits, and people get in, it's like agents, I feel like, get into this industry and they get their insurance license, and then they're like, put money in hand.
Well, it's get my insurance license, and step 13 is make millions, but I don't know how to do like the 11 steps.
Yeah, it's all that. That's what I'm talking about. The question mark of the business model, how to make it happen in between. So we want to give you guys some really good tactical knowledge today. And the first thing that I think really helps for insurance agents is a heavy dose of self-awareness, right? Because make no mistake about it, if you're any sort of insurance agent, whether you're selling Medicare or ACA or life insurance, whatever you're selling, you are an independent. No matter how you're contracted or if you're an employee, you are responsible for your own success. You are the one that's going to be the sole indicator of whether you're successful or not, no matter how you got contracted, like all these different ways we talked about. And a lot of people, if you are independent, you don't realize that you're a business owner. And even if you are an employee, you need to operate like you're a business owner and you need to treat yourself as such. So I challenge people and say, are you in this, or is this what you signed up for? Are you willing to go work and build a business? Are you willing to invest in yourself, to continue to teach, train, and develop? And then...
Well, and I also compare it and I say it's just like investing in stocks and everything else. Are you buying or are you renting?
Yep.
Are you making a transaction and you're going to flip this and you got this strike price, or, do you have options on it? Does it expire? Or is this a short-term play, or is this long-term? Are you a hold indefinitely? So I think that's part of it too. And like whatever the decision is for people, they need if they're invested, they should make decisions according to their mindset. Is this a long-term thing that they're going to be in forever? Or is this just, I need a job, I need cash on the table,
Yep.
I need a way to make money? Then the ideology is very different and the decisions they make would be different.
Correct. Yeah. So I say that like context is zero, the self-awareness, that's the precursor. The first thing I challenge people to do a lot of times when new agents come to our new agent training or when we hire new employees that are new to the business, you are a sales rep, right? And you are going to be performing sales work in some way, shape, or form. You are either going to be talking to people on the phone, you're going to be talking to people in person, you're going to be stopping by and doing market development. Everything is correlated with sales.
And you're going to get a lot of rejection.
Correct.
And a lot more no's than you are yeses. So are you going to talk about, did you look in the mirror?
Yep. So one of my things is when we do these new trainings, I challenge agents kind of after our trainer comes in and I give him my speech and I say, I want all of you to go home tonight and I want you to look yourself in the mirror, like look your own eyes in the mirror and say, am I willing to perform this sales work? If I'm working on the phones, am I going to be calling people or taking those inbound calls or whatever? If I'm supposed to be going by and visiting doctors or nursing homes or senior centers and making those connections, are you going to do it? Do you envision yourselves getting out of your car and going in and introducing yourself? Because if that answer is no, then you might as well save yourself the time and the heartache
and financial problems. Yeah,
correct, and just go do something else, and that's okay because
we have, and I will admit this is not like a negative way at all. We've had people start, because we usually do try to start people in groups, especially with contact center, and you have 6 or 8 people starting at once. But we'll have these batches and groups where we really tell them like, hey, just make sure like you all know what you're signing up for, that this is the role that you want. You understand that this is the day-to-day. This is the environment. This is where you're going to be working. This is how you're going to be doing it. And hey, go home. And if you decide this isn't what you want to be doing, then just let us know. Yeah, we've had people the same day or the very next day be like, just kidding, changed my mind. And I'm actually like, hey, I totally appreciate that. I would rather take that answer from people than lie to themselves or to me and say that they can do it and then just drag it out for 2 weeks or 2 months or 4 months or whatever that looks like. Because you used to also know that if it's not for people, it's hard to watch people suffer and not do well.
And not be happy and not good for anybody. And if you don't believe in what you're doing or what you're selling, I've sold things before where I didn't believe in it. It was a potentially good financial opportunity and I couldn't sell it no matter what, and it sucked. It was miserable.
Kirby
Vacuums.
No, it wasn't Kirby. It was
Majestics.
Oh God.
Hope they're still not in business. Selling vacuums, selling real estate coaching over the phone, all these scammy things that I just didn't believe in, that I couldn't get myself to do it. But this is not that. And so if people do show back up or they, the answer is, yeah, I'm in for it. I want to sell. The second thing that I have is that they're not driven enough. And we've talked about it on this podcast prior and, we sound like old old boomers saying like kids these days, but there's not a lot of people that have the drive. And sometimes we lament that where are the people that want to build a business? Where are the people that want to work hard for 2 to 5 years and become sovereign and become multimillionaires? Just less of them.
There are less of them. I actually was talking about this the other day too. It's really sad for me that these next generations, and we're talking like Zennials and younger, and these next generations, I feel like in some ways the American dream, so to speak, of owning your own business and being a small business owner is just dissolving and eroding from the identity of these next generations, which I hate, because it is true. Like, it's not easy to be your own sole operator and run your own business and do it and figure it out. It's challenging. I think that a lot of people are just saying, I'm just comfortable, going taking the easy route and working somewhere else, and easy way out.
Well, not only that, but post-pandemic, guys, it's a fact that the pandemic pretty much broke a lot of people's work ethics and reframed expectations of a reality that just doesn't exist, especially when times get lean, right? Like, a lot of people adopted this idea that they were going to be able to sit and work from home in their underpants and watch Netflix for 8 hours and push a couple buttons and send some emails for 2 hours a day, and they were going to be heavily compensated
the rest of their lives.
And there's a lot of people that fully embrace that ideology, and that's really changed. And a lot of the companies have kind of driven everybody back to work. They've seen, that kind of big social work experiment didn't probably quite work to the level that some people had hoped. And it does work for some people. Some people can totally operate like that, but it's not most. And we, very early on, we even had direct peer-to-peer comparisons of people that were selling from home, for example, versus would come into an office, and it was about half.
Yeah, and there's a lot of factors to that too. But I mean, a part of that too is that when you're in the office, there is that synergy. Mm-hmm. You learn from others around you. You're hearing conversations. You can immediately get answers from somebody, rather than having to send somebody, wait for them to be available, Slack them, ping them, whatever. It's just a very different structure of support there. So there's a lot of reasons for it, but yeah, you're right. And the other thing we observed is these last couple of years, and I actually was at lunch yesterday talking about this. We observed that there were a lot of agents who were they had tax IDs, they had, whatever their business set up, their LLC, and they filed for PPP loans, during COVID. And they just said, I got renewals coming in. I'm going to get some PPP money. I'm going to take this year off, so to speak. They really backed off. And then when things started to normalize again and they tried to get back into the swing of things, they just never really recovered. Mm-hmm. They never really got that momentum back and became the same kind of producers that they were we'll say 2020.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I challenge people and say, there's a difference between drive and motivation, and drive is not fleeting. It comes from your why. It drives you forward. And so hopefully, when I've done a presentation before, a keynote, where most of you probably got into this industry to provide yourself the financial freedom and flexibility to live an extraordinary life, an abnormal life. But is your effort matching what that desire was? Because the answer for a lot of people is no. And so I just challenge people to make sure that, because this legitimately is an industry where you can become a multimillionaire for a lot of people. And if I said, hey, if you just follow this path, and we see it all the time, we have many live examples, real life examples of this, and say, you just do this for 3 to 5 years and you're going to be independently wealthy, and you can live that lifestyle, but there's just not a lot of people that are willing to put their head down and get through the difficult times to make it work.
Yep.
So the third thing I have is people don't, and it kind of all ties together, is they don't have the habits and the standards that it takes to make it through those lean times, and
are you talking about, is that on the list too, like financial circumstances and all that as well?
Yeah, that's a little bit down here. It's my fit. That probably is the number one thing I've come to think of it, is people just aren't in a situation, but we can get there too. But
I'll let you finish on this one.
Yeah, so the habits and standards, right? It means, if it's going to take you a certain amount of time to build up your book of business, or to get going, or to teach yourself, a lot of times people want to just show up expect to have the information poured into their brain, expect to have the leads provided for them, expect to have, these things kind of laid out, and you've got to have and continue to get better on your habits and standards each day. And I just was talking to our agents about that this morning in one of our call centers. Is you are an expert in your field. You're a professional. You hold a professional license. You're not just some random Joe Schmo. You should have the background check. You should be trusted. You have a fiduciary duty to these beneficiaries that you work with. You're not just some random dude that's selling vacuums or selling cable services over the phone. And what is your standard as an agent? Like, would you want to hire yourself? Are you qualified to represent your parents or your loved ones or your children? Are you investing in your career and holding yourself to an accountability standard of knowledge to be able to add that value? And that really goes back to some of the things that CMS is looking to implement for next year. Is we as agents, we have to keep adding value. We have to keep adding value to the industry. Otherwise, we're going to lose our foothold.
Yep. The other thing, going back to habits, is their personal habits that make agents succeed. If your toxic trait is that you like to take it easy and travel all the time, you're probably not going to make it in this industry starting off. You can after you've been doing this for 5 years and you've really built a successful business, but you're not going to win starting off your first year doing that, because that's the other thing is, when I got into the business, I really did. I worked 6 days a week always for the first several years, and there's a lot of days I still work 6 days a week, but I would book out my Saturdays first, and I would work for 3 hours Saturday. Then because I would be on the phone on Mondays, and then I would book my Fridays, and then I would book my Thursdays, and I would book backwards my Tuesdays. And my goal was that Monday I could book enough appointments to where I didn't have to be on the phone Tuesday. That was always the motivation for me, because let's be honest, being on the phone sucks. Like calling leads and trying to book appointments and prospect, it's hard work and nobody likes it. So I would do that, and I got used to working 6 days a week. The other thing my mentor kind of taught me was when I would work in the day, I would wake up, and even if I didn't see anybody, I would put on shirt and tie. Now, granted, today these days I don't have to wear shirt and tie, but back in the day, I woke up shirt and tie even when I was making calls, because mentally I was working, and it put me in the right frame of thought to be successful. And so it was going back to that habit of it was a habit for me, and it became a habit, and my time management and how I did everything became a habit. And so I think that, again, you need to have the right habits in your personal and work life in order to be successful. Yep,
absolutely. The fourth thing is, you view it as a job and not as a career. And I think that a lot of people, especially because of the call centers and some of these W-2 opportunities, have dragged people into the industry who, we joke about it sometimes too, where it's like, well, if you're not making it at this company or that company or that company, you're probably not going to make it as an independent agent either,
Well, yeah, but and at what point, and I've had good conversations with agents to say, hey, there's a lot of careers that I couldn't make it in. Like, I just know that I wouldn't be a good roofer. I'm afraid of heights. It's like, I'm not going to be good going up on a ladder and standing on a roof because I'm afraid of heights. So it's not in the cards for me. There's certain people that this is just not in the cards for them.
Yep.
And that's okay to tell them that. We should probably also talk about that money element too.
Yeah, that's the next thing, and it's really probably one of the biggest determinants we see.
It is. It's really hard, and we've talked about it before. But look, if you're going to be a captive or a career agent somewhere or be on salary, it's very different. So like, if you find yourself and you're a listener and you're thinking about being an agent and having this career, if you don't have a really stable financial situation, you probably are not going to be able to just be an independent agent, get your license and go, on your track to becoming a millionaire. It's probably not going to work out for you, because you do, as an independent agent, have expenses. You're running a business. Mm-hmm. You're a sole proprietor without realizing it. And you have to pay for E&O, and you have certain little business expenses, and you have to have a marketing budget, and there's a lot of things out there you need to do. And if you don't have the finances and you can't even make it 2 or 4 weeks without a paycheck, it's just not feasible.
Yep.
So I think the more that agents are honest with themselves about that, and that's not to say that's always going to be the case. Why not take a role somewhere where you can be on salary or make an income or be a captive or whatever that looks like with somebody, grow, improve your financial situation, save some money, and at some point, a year, 2, 3 years down the road, you're in a position to then go out into the wild, so to speak, and forge your own path and be an independent agent. It's much more sensible and logical and realistic than for people who just don't have, 2 nickels to rub together. Yep. And they got to pay rent in 3 weeks, but they're going to start as an independent agent. That's just not a recipe for success.
Yeah, it's like you'll be lucky if one of your contracts is ready to go and you've passed certifications and you're potentially eligible. The other thing, that especially this week, we've been hammering on is insurance agents, the commissions, there's variabilities in the commission. The payouts are complex.
Well, to anybody listening too, you've been getting emails from all sorts of carriers too about, hey, there's a lag or an issue with the CMS file with commissions and true-ups aren't being paid. And I mean, this has been going on for 2 or 3 months now where CMS isn't reporting the true-up files to the carriers, so therefore they can't pay out the other part of agent commissions. So now you have hundreds of thousands of agents throughout the country who are expecting that other back half of their commissions months on end and haven't been getting paid those commissions.
Yeah, I can't remember if you talked about it, but early on when you got in the business and they changed the CMS comp and the commissions were held for, what was it, like the true-ups were held for about 4 to 6 months?
Yeah, so, I mean, when I got into the business, that was before carriers could pay a true-up. And then they actually changed it to where CMS had to validate or verify that it was actually an initial or a true-up. And so they passed essentially the legislation or the rule for it and didn't have a system to implement it. So there was over 8 months while, I was crushing it out there, writing all this business my first year out there. And when I was writing 300-400 apps, on my own, and all throughout lock-in, most of that business was all new business, but yet, you're not getting paid 50% of your commissions for, 8 months.
Yeah, my point is there's a lot of variability that come from these big giant entities, and we as
well, and think about this too. Even still, there's a lot of carriers out there where you can write a Medicare or ACA plan, like you're writing a future effective date. If you write ACA, those carriers don't pay a single commission until the month after. So if I go write an April 1st effective date, I'm not even going to see my first month's per member per month payment until May, the month after. If I go write Medicare and it's someone turning 65 and I write them 3 months out, some of those carriers don't pay until the month after it's effective. I'm 4 months until I see a penny from my work, which is tough.
Yeah, and one of the other things, I can't remember if we've talked about on this podcast yet or not, because it's one of the things I always hammer on, is know your numbers, right? Understand deeply how you get paid, when you get paid, track that. I've always ran a ledger-like book of like, hey, I should be making this much on this policy. I haven't been paid on it now. I could tell you at any given time how much I should have been owed on those commissions, what my block of business was, what my residuals were. But a lot of agents, bewilderingly just write it and cross their fingers and hope that they somehow get compensated for it the right way.
They just get a deposit and they're like, yeah, I got paid some money, so I think it's right. But we always track expected versus receive. Like what was the expected amount versus what we actually got. And obviously, you get 100,000 transactions. You go, yep, these ones are all accurate. We got exactly what we were expecting. These ones are in question. What the heck? We got to go figure out what's going on.
Yeah. The number 6 thing that I had that kind of ties to the income and the commissions was people have unrealistic income expectations too, right? And what that leads to a lot of times is something called the valley of latent expectations, right? So people think that their success is going to be this linear line, like I'm going to start writing 30 policies a month and then 60, and then, by the end of the first year, I'm going to write 360, and they're thinking they're going to make all this money. Well, when that doesn't happen, it's like everyone's seen those success memes, right? Where it like shows what they think it's going to be like and what the reality is, where it's all squiggly and you go back down. And
it's true.
That's how income is like your first couple of years in this industry too. And what we see is a lot of people have these expectations, we call them last chance millionaires, and they think they're going to be they're going to, Dan always says it's the best get rich slow scheme, but they think they have these expectations of where they're going to be sooner than they are. And then they get disappointed, and it's like, no, you really got to wait till those residuals start building up, till those policies that you've written are now on renewal. And that starts, you're going to get an automatic increase every calendar year and every month thereafter.
And it all gets easier. So it's like that snowball effect where, you start to write more business, then you start to get more referrals from clients. So you have more organic business, then you have more volume, you have more revenue, you can buy more leads, you can do more retention. So it's like every year in this business, it gets easier and gets better. And so long as the agent is still working and stacking their chips, so to speak, and not taking their foot off the gas. That's the other thing is, people, I told an agent yesterday, they're in the danger zone for me in that, and it's an agent that I'm actually, proud of them so far. Last year, they were working a warehouse job, a job that wasn't, probably great. They didn't want to be there. And they were doing Medicare a little bit part-time. And now they quit their job. And this year they've been doing it full-time. And they're already going to make $85,000 this year, like really going at it full-time, which is good. And it's more income that they were making in their kind of dead-end job. Next year, they're already training to be well over six figures. And again, to go from, hey, I'm in a dead-end factory job to 2 years later making six figures and having all that flexibility and freedom, that's great. That's a success story. But it is that danger zone where it's more money than the person's used to. It's, they're starting to enjoy some of the freedoms of having that extra money, going on trips and being able to buy new nice things, which is great. You love to see it. But the hope is just not that person, if they get complacent and comfortable, it's amazing how quick you'll be right back to square one.
Yep, absolutely. So all pearls of wisdom here on the finances of this industry. The seventh thing that I had for why agents fail within a couple of years is they don't have a solid support system. And I think that you could break that down into two things. It could be your relationships, your familial structure, maybe with a spouse or a significant other, maybe doesn't support you in that or doesn't want you to make that leap. One of the things I liked when we had Nate Hess on the podcast a couple of episodes ago was when he went to his wife and said, hey, I'm going to quit my job and go make a job that pays me $0. But, long term, it's going to be worth it for me. And we've both had that conversation with our wives as well. And, if you don't have that support structure, if you're not able to, or maybe you're a single parent or something and you've got young children to take care of and you're just not able to dedicate the time or to go out and perform the sales work. If you don't have that support structure, then you really are not going to be able to make it in this biz.
Yeah, it's true. The other thing I would kind of just, I don't know where I'm throwing this in or which bullet point we're trying to fit this into as well, but gig working over the last couple of years has become very popular and understandable. It has so much flexibility. You can kind of like, and I'm going to use the examples of like door dashing and Uber drivers or other things. There's a lot of gig working that goes on now, which is great, that flexibility. And so I think that's been one other thing that in these last 3 years has kind of broken our industry in some ways. Our industry is not really built to be gig work, meaning that you can work part-time and succeed in this. So I could have somebody who says, hey, I only have 4 hours a week to work doing this, but if they consistently do it every single week on a regular basis, they can be successful building on it. What you can't do is work for a month, to some degree of activity, and then, go inactive for a month or two and then come back on for a month and then go inactive for 2 months. That inconsistency is really hard because then every time you're starting to get back in the groove of having conversations and closing business and selling, it's like you're starting over from scratch every time.
Yep.
And then the industry is changing, the rules are changing, and what you did 3 months ago, you suddenly can't do even 3 months later. And so the other element, of course, when you do gig work is you can go perform the service and you're paid immediately, right away. And this industry, like you can go work a little bit part-time, but you may not see the funds from that for some period of time, which is why I tell people, be really careful if you're going to get into this. This can really work. You just have to have that level of consistency.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, that's the thing about momentum and people, going in and out. I mean, it's why one of the reasons why the rocket is our logo is most people don't know, but a rocket, when it launches, expends 95 to 99% of its fuel and effort just to get off the ground, just to get off the platform. And then it's the momentum that carries it through into the atmosphere. And I really like that analogy because, if you think about when you're doing that with your career, your business, and you're like, oh, I sold for a couple of months and then I took the summer off because I was, doing this, and then I'm back in September and October, and then I'm in and out. It's very, very hard to get that momentum when you have to keep starting and stopping, especially now when our industry is dynamic as it is and things are changing. You have to stay up on tools and tech and plan changes and carrier portfolios and all these things. There's just a lot more. You can't just, like you said, pull out the briefcase and show up the day before AEP and go start plopping it down on people's kitchen tables anymore.
Yeah. And to circle back and kind of wrap this all up before we end this one, going back to our recruiters and, our staff members and that team talking to agents, what we try to do is we don't try to make the decision for agents or tell them what to do. We never like that, but we do try to, like any prospect, we want to ask questions. We want to find out, what's your life situation like? How are you aligned? How many years in the industry do you have? How do you make your money currently? Like, what are you actually doing to pay the bills? And we try to find out as much as we can about the agent, and then from there make recommendations and say, hey, you can do whatever you want, but it sounds like we recommend this path for you based on your goals, your situation, your everything. And I think that's key, is trying to have that right expectation from the get-go and put people in a situation where they can succeed.
Yep, absolutely. The other thing is, I have a personal thing that I call it my rule of 10, where I always want to be in the top 10% of everything. And so when you consider that 90% of agents fail, I always look at it on the positive side of that, where I go, that's a lot of opportunity for those of us who are willing, or those of you out there who are willing to put in the work, because there's fewer and fewer people who are out there willing to do that. And you're going to have a disproportionate opportunity, and the industry needs you. The industry, the clients need you. The carriers need you. They need people. You don't really have to have a lot of very specific skill sets. You got to show up with the willingness to work, the willingness to learn, and then be consistent and develop those habits. And it doesn't matter if you're a PhD or a high school dropout. If you can get licensed and you put the hard work in, you can have a career and an income that's unlike any other industry.
Yeah, no, 100% true. And going back to that, because I really want this episode to feel a lot more positive than it is negative, because I don't want people to misunderstand and think that we're dogging on the agent community in a 45-minute podcast, because that's really not the case. It's really just observations that we're seeing of the reasons that people aren't winning. And again, going back to, look, just have that right expectation, be honest with yourself. And then when you have realized exactly where you're at in life, find that opportunity that's going to match with where you're at. And that would be like my best advice that I could give anybody out there.
Yep. The best structure is the one where you're able to make money and learn and be successful.
And you're not, doesn't mean you have to be there forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just means, hey, have your 1 year goal, your 3 year, your 5 year, your 10 year, just have your goals and your plans there, and know how you're going to go achieve them. And to your point, there's fewer and fewer people out there that are willing to do the work. You know what I mean? And so everybody, what does the expression go? Like, everybody wants the paycheck, nobody wants the work.
Yeah.
So it is out there. There are more people out there than ever before who need life insurance, who need help with Medicare, who need help with their health benefits. And there is a great marketplace out there. It's just the gold. It's all out there. Just go get that pick, go get that shovel, go get it. It's all yours.
Yep, absolutely, guys. Like I said, we need you. The industry needs you. The beneficiaries need you. It's available. Catch you next time.